One of the more exciting parts of the college football world right now is the transfer portal. I know it's controversial, and a lot of people really hate that it's basically turning into free agency at this point, where you have guys like Jalen Daniels negotiating contracts to stay in college. But I think it brings a new level of excitement, and you're looking at the college football landscape right now. Teams like Arizona State that just won the Big 12, Sam Levitt, a quarterback that they brought in from the transfer portal. You look at Oregon, players that they brought in from the portal are making massive differences in helping them be one of the top seeds in college football. Look at Texas and what they've been able to do. The transfer portal is going to become a bigger part of college football. And I think that you're going to see a lot of teams really try and tap into it, unlike ever before. Some really interesting names. Now, the portal doesn't officially open until December 9th. So it is December 7th right now, 4:54 p.m. Central Time at the time of recording this. So if any news breaks, that's on me. I'm trying to get this up a little bit early just so you guys can get an idea of where I think a lot of these players are going to go. And there's going to be players that hit the portal later. So if this video gets over 25 likes, we'll do a part two. So that's going to be how we're going to go about this one. Got some interesting takes here. I'm really excited. But before we get into it, leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. Stay tuned for tomorrow where we're going to have college football playoff previews on the Alabama on all the college football playoff games. Let me preface that. So all the early first round matchups we will do preview episodes on, and then we will do a bowlmania / college football playoff overall prediction on where I think things are going to lay out. So tons of college football content for you guys, but let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with Jaheim Otis. And I think he is going to go to Ole Miss. It seems like there's 3 crystal ball predictions out for him right now. Ole Miss is the favorite, and he didn't play much for Alabama this year. 2 tackles, 3 pressures. I think he played in 4 games before hitting the portal, but Otis is a really interesting player. He's got good size up front. He's been a pretty effective run defender throughout his career. He's just kind of gotten stuck on this Alabama defensive line. He's not really been able to make much of an impact because, like I said, you got guys like Tim Smith and Quan Robinson and a bunch of different guys that keep emerging. He's never really been given the opportunity that he has earned at Alabama, and I think he's going to be one of the top names on the defensive line. It's not a great interior class at the moment. You got Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky, really is the other interesting name, but Otis seems to be the favorite, and Ole Miss, they're going to be losing some guys. The interior of their defensive line, J.J. Pegues is likely headed to the NFL draft. Walter Nolan also likely headed to the NFL draft. Lane Kiffin loved the portal. It was very effective for them this year, and they got some huge difference makers. And I think they're going to be back in, get the number 1 interior prospect for the 2nd year in a row, and add Jaheim Otis to their defensive line. Another move I think we could see, I really like Eric Rivers from Florida International. I think this is a player that's falling a little bit under the radar in the portal. This is the 2nd year in a row that FIU has had a really intriguing wide receiver prospect. Last year, it was Chris Mitchell. He transferred from FIU, went to Notre Dame, and he's been really solid for them this year. Rivers, a bit of an up and down guy. He's not the biggest receiver. He's not this big play threat like Chris Mitchell was, but he's been incredibly effective for the Panthers. 62 receptions, 1,166 yards, and 12 touchdowns. FIU fired their coach. They've had a lot of turmoil down there, but I think this is a really interesting player. He's got incredible speed. He's a good route runner, and he's probably going to be that primary slot guy. Florida is a team that is on the rise. Billy Napier has done a heck of a job recruiting the last couple of weeks, really flipping a lot of big prospects. You're landing players in the portal early on. And I think getting DJ Lagway a nice weapon like Eric Rivers could be a big one. Now, the concern with Rivers is going to be his hands. He suffered 7 drops in the 2023 season. That's something that's going to have to improve, but I think he's going to get some real Power 4 offers. I think Florida is going to try and entice him to stay in state, and they're going to land Eric Rivers. Another one I think we're going to see is Josh Thompson, probably the top interior or the top offensive lineman in the portal right now. Thompson's a really interesting one. I believe he was first team all Big Ten, was one of PFF's highest graded Big Ten offensive linemen. This is a guy that's got experience playing both right guard, where he played a majority of his snaps this year for Northwestern, and right tackle. He allowed 0 sacks, just 8 pressures on 646 offensive snaps for the Wildcats this year. He's going to be one of these top targeted offensive linemen. And there's a bunch of teams that are in the mix here. You look around, Michigan State is in the mix. Michigan is in the mix. Colorado is going to be in the mix for him. I think Michigan's going to be able to get it done. They've got a very large NIL collective. And their offensive line this year definitely regressed from where it was in their national championship season. Thompson is from the Michigan area, and I think now going to play and block for a quarterback as exciting as Bryce Underwood, maybe they're able to land another guy from the portal. I definitely think they're in the mix for a bunch of these guys. I think that would be really interesting. I think Josh Thompson is going to be one of the more sought-after offensive linemen. I think the Wolverines are going to be able to get it done, and he is going to be a starting player for them next season. Next one we're going to talk about is Micah Hudson. Now, you look at the stats this year, and you're like, J-Wack, why is he going to be in this video? 7 receptions, 111 yards, had no touchdowns. He is one of the most exciting players in the portal because he was a 5-star. He was a 5-star plus recruit coming out of high school. I believe the first 5-star plus whoever recruited at Texas Tech. Didn't end up working there. This freshman wide receiver class was unbelievably talented with Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman. Micah Hudson was in that mix with these guys. He was an incredibly talented player in high school. Didn't really see the field a whole lot at Texas Tech. I don't fully know if he redshirted his year, what ended up happening there, but he entered the portal, and I think he is going to get a ton of really big offers, and I think Georgia has to be able to get this one done. If you're watching Georgia right now, their biggest concern going into the playoffs is this receiving room. They don't have a receiver that I trust at all to make plays. Arian Smith has bricks for hands. You've got Dylan Bell, who has got good size. This is a guy you have to go out and get. Hudson's a really talented player, really explosive. He's got good size. This is the type of guy that if you want to stay relevant in the new look SEC, you're going to have playmakers. I think Micah Hudson is worth an investment here of big money if you're the Bulldogs, because this receiving room has looked like a disaster. I think Hudson can be a player that can make a difference for Georgia. Another player that is really interesting is Prince Will Uman-Mielen. Now, I'm a big fan of his brother, Princely Uman-Mielen. We did a full breakdown on him, so if you're interested in that, be sure to go check that out. But he's one of the more interesting defensive linemen in the portal. Now, again, stats don't really tell the full story with him. 18 pressures, 10 tackles on the year, didn't have a sack, only 1.5 sacks through 2 years. But he shows some really exciting potential off the edge. He's really explosive. He's a solid run defender, and he knows how to create pressure. He plays with a high intensity level, which you absolutely love to see. And if I'm Florida State, this is the type of guy I'm missing. Now, what makes this interesting and why I'm not 100% positive about this one, his teammate, James Williams, who we didn't end up talking about in this one, is crystal ball to Florida State. Now, obviously, I'm not in the Nebraska locker room. I don't really know the close interconnections of James Williams and Prince Will Uman-Mielen, but I do think that could be a recruiting tactic to bring him here. Florida State had a couple of really interesting edge rushers, Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones Jr. Jones never really turned into the player we thought he was going to, and Patrick Payton had a solid year, but it wasn't anything spectacular. You assume Peyton's going to the NFL. These two Nebraska edge rushers could be big difference makers for Florida State. I think they're going to be active in the portal. They're going to make this move, to try and shore up the defensive side of the ball. And I think they're going to make another move to go get Berrien Brown. Now, Berrien Brown is heavily linked to Florida State right now. Interesting player. Not a player that I was in love with this season. The two Kentucky receivers, which we'll talk about the other one in a second, really interesting players, really different play styles. But Berrien Brown, 29 receptions, 361 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's been a mainstay for the Kentucky offense for the last few seasons. primarily a slot weapon, a little bit undersized, but he's got incredible speed. For those of you that have watched the Bordeaux channel, you would know Barian Brown is a demon at times on the field. This Kentucky offense really took a step back in 2024, and both receivers hit the portal. Now, Florida State has a receiving room with a lot of guys that haven't really blossomed into anything, and Barian Brown could be a huge difference maker for a team that he goes to. I think Alabama could be in the mix here. I think Michigan's going to be in the mix. I think you're going to get some conversations there, but I like Florida State. Florida State is a big-time school that needs some serious reinforcements. I think they can guarantee him playing time right away. He's going to be one of their top targets. He's got a real chance to improve his draft stock. I like the Seminoles to make a big move here and go land Barian Brown from Kentucky. Talk about the other Kentucky receiver for a minute, Dane Key. Dane Key's interesting, heavily linked to Nebraska right now, and I kind of love that fit for him. 47 receptions for 715 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a really big year for the Wildcats. Was one of the biggest standouts on the offensive side of the ball for Kentucky. Jamal Banks was really solid for Nebraska this year, and I like his development that he's turned into. Isaiah Nayer as well, but Dane Key brings a very similar type of play style, and he's a big weapon that is going to really work that short to intermediate part of the field and give Dylan Raiola some easy dump-off passes, and he can make stuff happen after the catch. He's got a large catch radius, good and strong hands, and I think he could be a real difference maker for wherever he goes. Similar to Barian Brown, I think he's going to get some legitimate offers elsewhere. Colorado, I think, is going to be heavily interested in Dane Key as well, but I do really like his fit to Nebraska, and that's going to be where I think he ends up. Another player I'm really excited about in this portal is Caden Salter. Now, the Liberty quarterback has been very productive for them, not just through the air, but on the ground. 1,875 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. Had his worst season of his career this year. He's entering the portal, and I think Houston's an interesting one. Salter is from the Texas area. He's linked to Texas State, which I think is an interesting one, but Houston makes a little bit of sense. The Big 12 is incredibly competitive. You saw the way the tiebreakers ended up playing out late in the season, but more importantly, I do think that the hometown kid coming back is a great story. I think him going back to the area where he grew up would be huge, and Willie Fritz is a really good recruiter. He's a winner, and when he left Tulane last year, a lot of people thought that Houston was going to really bounce back. Didn't have the season they were hoping for. Donovan Smith, incredibly inconsistent as a player. Salter has some of those inconsistencies, there's no doubt, but I think he gives you a higher ceiling. What he can do on the ground, his arm talent, I think it makes sense. They've been linked to a couple of quarterbacks in the portal. Salter is one of them. I think this will be a really good pickup for them, and I think it's one that I'm very interested to see how it plays out. Another player that's really intriguing is Nick Anderson. Now, he's a tough one because he only played one game this year for Oklahoma. One game, but was a player that people absolutely loved coming into the year. 2023, he had 38 receptions for 796 yards and 10 touchdowns. Big-time weapon for Oklahoma and was a huge piece for this offense with Dylan Gabriel at the helm. Now he's hitting the portal, arguably the top receiver in the portal. I think there's one that I have ahead of him that we'll talk about here in just a minute, but he's a big-time weapon. Great speed. His release package against press is really good, and he's got these long strides to get open deep down the field. He's a big play machine, and he knows how to find the end zone. And he's got great hands to go along with it. I don't think he's this twitched up route runner, this guy that's going to really work the middle, but he's a legitimate deep threat that Michigan would be dying to have on their team. They don't have a player like this in their offense. And when Colston Loveland went down, you could really see the way they were funneling their offense through him. This is a team that I think is really going to look heavily into adding receivers in the portal. Nick Anderson, we talked about Eric Rivers being a potential target for them as well. I think Michigan's going to be heavy spenders during the transfer portal, and I think Nick Anderson is going to be one of the top big-time recruits to join the Wolverines. The biggest receiver in the portal is Kevin Concepcion. Had an incredible true freshman season. Dipped off a little bit this year, though. 53 receptions, 463 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, those numbers are still absolutely phenomenal. I think Penn State's going to be the team. I've gone back and forth with about 7 different teams. Miami is a team that I think could be heavily involved in KC Concepcion. Colorado, we don't have anybody crystal balled to Colorado, but I actually think Colorado has a good chance of landing at least one of these guys with how active they were last year. Georgia, I thought that was a real possibility. Michigan, thought that one. Oregon is really interesting, but I landed on Penn State. Now, Penn State's offense under Andy Kotelnicki really changed. This offense has opened up a ton, more targets in the passing game. And if Drew Aller does decide to come back, I think this is a huge pickup. But even with Bo Pribula, I like this passing game for Penn State. I think they've got some real players here. Tyler Warren's going to the NFL. You need to try and replace that production. And Concepcion, not the biggest guy, but a very good route runner, great hands, great speed after the catch. He, on the first couple of weeks of the season, was red hot, and he looked like he could be a Heisman type of player. Really cooled off in the second half of the season, as did NC State. But I think Penn State is going to throw the bag at him and try and bring him to the Nittany Lions and try and help them stay relevant in the Big Ten for the next couple of seasons. Luke Haas, I genuinely have no idea where to go with this one. Again, Colorado very well could be the team. Landing on Iowa. Iowa's probably going to lose Luke Lachey. And I think Haas is the best tight end in the portal, and I don't know if it's particularly close. Incredible size. He's got some route running, which you'll love to see from the tight end position. I think he moves really fluidly, and he's put up really good numbers for Arkansas. Despite them not wanting to pass the ball a ton, we know how much Iowa loves their tight ends. It's tight end university. I think Luke Haas is a player that has generated some serious pre-draft buzz for 2026. And I think Iowa is a huge spot for him. So I've got him going to Iowa. Don't want to spend a ton of time here because, in all honesty, not as familiar with his game as I am with some other players. So wanted to throw him in here, show him some love. Iowa's where I have him, but this is the one I feel least confident about. Now I think we're going to get into some of the big-time quarterbacks. And, well, before we get into that, let's talk about Dylan Thieneman. Now, Dylan Thieneman, in my opinion, is the best player in the entire transfer portal. Had a down 2024 year, 78 tackles, no picks, 5 pass breakups. But if you go back to his true freshman season where he won Big Ten Freshman of the Year, he had 6 interceptions. He had 5 pass deflections. Maybe it's the other way around, but he had 6 interceptions, 5 or 6, either way. The ball skills are really impressive. Moves really well. He's got really good athleticism. Purdue's really weird. I really hated the way they played him because they played him about 30 yards deep this year, and that really limited his ability to make plays on the football. He's one of the most talented safeties in the country. You could talk about him being a first-round pick in 2026. I think that's the type of player he is. Bunch of teams. I mean, I would be shocked if he wasn't getting offers from at least half the Power 4 teams. Miami was a team that I really thought made a lot of sense. And because of his ability to hit, they needed help on the back end. I love his ability there. I think Georgia, another team that I think could make some sense. Ohio State's been mentioned a few times. The kids from Indiana went to Purdue. I've got him staying in Indiana. We know how much Kurt Signetti has used the transfer portal to his advantage. I think the Hoosiers are going to be buyers. Now, this one is one that I genuinely have no idea where it's going to go. Because Purdue and Indiana are rivals, I could definitely see him going elsewhere. Colorado is the team that I'm keeping my eye on, though. If it's not Indiana, I think Colorado makes a lot of sense. He stays with the black and gold. Really tough one to predict here, but I went with Indiana ever so slightly over Miami and Colorado. Now we're going to get into the quarterbacks. And Miller Moss is the first one. Miller Moss is a player that is going to be a massive difference maker for a team. And I don't think teams realize how good he was this year. 2,548 yards, 18 touchdowns, 9 picks. His composure in big-time moments was really impressive. USC benched him in the back half of the season, mostly to see what they had in Jade Maiava. And I thought Miller Moss was really done dirty by USC. The arm talent is there. He's got incredible pocket awareness. He moves well, and he's got really solid accuracy. 9 picks is where you worry. The interception's a little bit higher than you'd like to see, but he's a baller. And Louisville has made some moves. They got Jack Plummer from the portal. They got Tyler Shuck from the portal. I think Miller Moss is that next player to really go after. He's linked to Louisville, Auburn, and Iowa. First of all, Iowa, to me, being linked to any of these quarterbacks, there's another one we'll talk about, don't really make any sense. They don't pass the ball. I don't really know. They'll probably land one of these guys, in all honesty, but I don't really know how much I'd want to go play there. Louisville, they've moved the ball. They've got weapons here. You're getting back who are they bringing back? I'm blanking on the name, but the kid from South Alabama that they brought in last year, he missed most of the year. He's coming back. Now you've got this really exciting running back in Isaac Brown, and Louisville can be a contender in the ACC. I think Miller Moss can be that quarterback to get them there. I've got him going to Louisville. Another quarterback I love, and in my opinion is the top quarterback in the portal, is Connor Wigman. Another guy that I felt was done dirty by Texas A&M. Now, they played well with Marcel Reed. The big question mark when it comes to Connor Wigman is his health. How healthy can Connor Wigman be for the long haul? Because he dealt with an ankle injury in 2023 that sidelined him for most of this year. Got banged up early in 2024 and missed some time and ended up losing his job as a result. Syracuse is a team that I really like. Kyle McCord was coming off an incredible season for them. Fran Brown has done a heck of a job recruiting for the Orange, and I think Connor Wigman is a really good quarterback. Now, the mechanics are not all the way there. Has a weird sidearm delivery. The athleticism hasn't quite figured it all out, but if you can get him on a team like Syracuse with the weapons that they have, the coaching they have, I think you could really tap into what could be an incredibly high ceiling. Remember, this is a guy a lot of people thought was going to be QB1 in the 2025 draft coming into the year. Had a bit of a disappointing year, ended up losing his starting job, but I think Syracuse, second team in the ACC, that I think is going to make a big quarterback move. Another one, and I believe the last player of the video, I think Jackson Arnold goes to Auburn. Auburn has shown that they have weapons. Cam Coleman is one of the most exciting young receivers in all of college football. They run the ball well. Jackson Arnold, I think, is still very, very talented. 12 touchdowns, only 3 picks. Oklahoma was a mess this year offensively. They fired their offensive coordinator as a result. They're bringing in the Washington State coordinator. Top of that, the run game, never could really figure it out. They were incredibly banged up, but Jackson Arnold brings so much versatility. He can run the football. He can pass the ball. I think Hugh Freeze is going to be all over it. I think they land either Arnold or Moss. I think one of those guys is going to Auburn. And I think Auburn is going to be a legitimate threat in the SEC next year with this move. I thought Peyton Thorne at times really held this team back with his inaccuracy. Not this year. I think Jackson Arnold makes the move to Auburn and tries to get them back to the top of the SEC. But those are my predictions for the first 15 players in the portal. A couple of other guys I think are worth noting. Phoenix Jackson, the linebacker from Fresno State, I think he goes to Indiana. That's a player that's heavily linked to the Hoosiers, SMU. I believe Nebraska's in there. I think Indiana gets it done, continues to boost their defense. Same thing. I do want to talk about Josiah Trotter, the brother of Jeremiah Trotter Jr., son of Jeremiah Trotter Sr. I think he goes to Colorado. Colorado continues to boost up their secondary. And then Tanner Koziel, the tight end from Ball State. A lot of teams I think are going to be really interested in him. I think he's the top tight end outside of Luke Haas in the portal. I think Michigan or Penn State will end up landing Koziel. But let me know who you guys think is going to be the top names in the portal. Who did I miss out on? Julian Humphreys, I think, goes to Miami. That's the last one. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.